Alright, welcome to part 2 of making a custom cursor for Unity. In this part, we're going to go into Photoshop actually and create our own custom cursor using GUI texture to show inside our game. Now, if you remember where we were when we left off in the last video, we were in our platform game scene, and we had created a custom cursor and that can move around, and when it rolls over an object it will change color. So we're just going to change now and not use this arrow and instead make a kind of a bullseye. And in order to do that, we need to get into Photoshop. So let's go there next. Okay, here we are in Photoshop. My version might look slightly different than yours. What we're going to do is create a new file, and we're just going to play a little bit first to learn how to use the pen tool. So you can create a file and call it whatever you like. This is not yet going to be our custom cursor. We're first going to just learn how to use it. So I'll call it pen play. And I'm going to change this to pixels. And I'm going to start off with a really big one. Later on we'll make a smaller version of this. 1024 by 1024, setting the resolution to 300. Color mode, RGB color. And for the background, well, let's start with a white background. Okay. There it is. I'm going to come over now to my pen tool. You'll find it over on the left-hand side, about 2/3 of the way down. And we're going to start off by clicking to create a square. Now watch how this works. I click to create a spot. I come over here, I can click again to create a second spot, and a line will automatically get drawn between those two. If I undo that last one, another way you can do this is if I hold down the Shift key, even if I move way up here or way down here, it's going to create a straight line right across. Same thing, if I come down here and I hold the Shift key, it'll make a nice straight line. Here, a straight line. And then when I get to this point, if I come up and hover over this beginning tiny little square, you'll see that the icon changes and there's a little circle. I can click that to close this path that I'm creating using the pen tool. There it is, it's all closed up now. One thing to notice, by the way, is now I've created this closed path, so before I go to create a new one, I'm going to choose a nice fill color over here and fill, and look at that, it's filling up the whole thing. Now why is that? Why is it then I use this, it doesn't fill up this space? Well, let me show you. If I come over here, here's my layers, channels, paths, click on the paths, got this one called work path. Look down at the very bottom here, and you'll see there are a couple of circles. This one is called fill path, this one is called stroke path. So if I click the fill path, now that fills in that spot. If, however, I click the stroke path, it will fill this line with whichever brush is currently selected. So I can check on my brushes. I've got this little brush here with the sort of a thin line. So watch, if I click on that, then it fills the lines of that path. Alright, now I'm starting fresh and new all over again, and I'm going to show you a next very powerful way of using the pen tool. Powerful and really hard. So I'm going to have you, I'll give you a quick demonstration of some basics. It will be a little confusing, but what I'll have you do is go in and play around, and I'll continue on in the video, assuming that you've played around on your own. This time I'm going to click out just like I did last time. Click over here, I click again, or if I want to make it a nice straight line, I can hold down the Shift key, and even if I'm up here, down here, it'll make a straight line. Now watch this. I'm going to come up over here and click. This time I'm going to click and hold, and then I'm going to drag off to the right. And you'll see when I do that, I get a curve, and as I stretch these directional handles out, the curve shape changes. I can also rotate those directional handles as well. If I release that one, come down and click the next spot, then I will get another curve automatically. You'll see I've still got this control directional handle up here. Now, though, if I were to click on that and just regular click, it's going to draw a new line, which is not what I want. If I want to adjust that handle, which will then adjust this curve, I can hold down the Command key, and that will allow me to adjust that curve. I can also hold down the Alt key, which will do the same thing, but you'll see it does a slightly different form, right? Okay. Well, the way we're doing it now, it's essentially the same. If I hold down the Command key and click on the anchor point, I can move that anchor point around, and in doing that, I get this guy back again. But now when I adjust it, it's adjusting just half of the curve, right? It's adjusting this curve, which makes sense. Or we're adjusting this curve over here. Now if I come back down over here, click out over here, then I get another straight line. Let's say that I have got a path drawn out here, and I want to come back and mess with this guy again. Well, you'll see by default I've got this auto add and delete function set. So if I come over here and move my cursor over that anchor point, you'll see a little minus sign. If I were just to click on it, it would delete that anchor point, and then I just have a line drawn between here and here, which isn't what I want to do. I want to adjust it, so I hold down the Command key. This is on a Mac. Click on it. Then I get the adjustment bar up here, and that allows me to adjust that curve. Okay. If I come over to this one, hold down the Command key and click, I get the adjustment bar up there. Come over here, click over here, and there is no adjustment for this because it's a straight line. What if I do want to add a new anchor point? Well, then I can move my mouse over anywhere, and you'll see a little plus sign appear. Again, this is if you have the auto add or delete box selected. Then I click, I get a new anchor point, and you'll see that I've got these adjustment bars. And if I hold down the Command key, I can adjust the two of those, and it will adjust both curves that are connected to that anchor point. If, however, I hold down the Alt key, it will adjust just the anchor point for the curve that is associated with that directional handle. And once I've done that, then I can only adjust this guy over here. And I can do that with either the Alt key or the Command key. If I click the Command key and click that anchor point again, I can adjust it by moving the anchor point around. Okay. I can add new anchor points onto curves too. So I click here, and I get those two anchor points. If I hold down the Command key, I can move those around, move the point around, like so. Once I adjust one of these handles by using the Alt command to adjust just one of the curves, then that's what's going to happen basically from then on, is I'm going to adjust each of those individual curves like so. If I want to remove an anchor point, I just click on it, and that will remove the anchor point. Doing that will then connect the two anchor points that had been connected to that third anchor point that I got rid of. So if I click on this guy, then I get a line connecting these two, and I can adjust that curve like so. Adjust this one as so. All right. So this is sort of the main point. When you're done drawing any given path, if you just hit the Escape key, that will deselect that path. If you want to select it again, hold down the A key and click on it, and that will select it again. So I want to play around with this a little bit, and a good way to play around with it is to try to trace some shapes, which is what we're going to do for our next assignment. So let's practice that a little bit. So what I'm going to do is come over to my paths, and I've got some paths here because I was working earlier, so I'm going to just click and drag those down to the trash can to delete them. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in some images from the PowerPoint for class. I'm going to paste them in and then go to my Select tool, and it's going to ask me whether I want to place the file. And I'll say yes, place it. and you'll see it becomes its own Vector Smart Object layer. I'm going to add a new layer on top of that, and this is where I'm actually going to draw using my pen tool. I'll go to the Vector Smart Object layer and just lock it. No, I'm probably not going to need to do that, but just to be safe, and then reselect this new layer that I've just created. Come over to my pen tool. Make sure, by the way, that in the pen tool this drop-down box in the toolbar is set to path. Now let's see if we can draw this out. What I'm going to do is I'll draw this one to show you, and then I'm going to assume that you are going to go through and draw out the rest of these. I'll pause the video while you have a chance to do that, or you should pause the video, and then we'll continue once these have all been drawn out to the next step. So for this first one, watch, I click here, click up over here, and I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key after I click, hold down the Shift, drag off to the right, and you'll see I can match that shape really well. Now, once I'm done drawing with that path, I can hit the Escape key, and that will deselect it. I'd like to draw a stroke line where I put that path. Alright, so I go to the Path section. I've got this work path. I'd actually like to go ahead and save this work path. Work path is basically sort of a temporary, the current path that you're drawing. To save it, you can click and drag it onto the new path icon. Then that will create it as a new path, and it will select it again. You can have it selected or not. I'll leave it sort of selected for the moment. And if I want to draw the stroke path, I need to select a brush. I'll select this one, then come down to, on the path window, come down to the stroke path drawing, click, and it will draw that path. Now if I want to then draw a next one, I need to make sure that I've got this not selected, so I hit Escape. Then I can come down here and click, and then I'm going to let you finish drawing out the rest of these, and then we'll come back and continue. Alright, well, here we are. I hope you had good success in tracing out the shapes. I was pretty good in terms of my open paths, but my heart, as you'll see, was pretty lame, so hopefully yours is a little bit better than mine. Alright, let's try this again. We're going to make a new image that I want you to try to trace. On the Blackboard site for this week, there is a file called ex2.jpg. I want you to download it and then import it into a new Photoshop file, and then see if you can make a path for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this exercise 2, and I'll make my size again 1024 by 1024. Set my resolution to 300, RGB color. I'll go ahead and leave the background white and create the new one. I'll save this old one. You don't actually have to turn this in, but you can save it if you like, so you can try it out. Okay, and I'll close that earlier one down. And now I'm here in exercise 2. And I'm going to grab the image that we're going to use, paste it into my project. As soon as I go to grab the selection tool, it's going to ask me if I want to place it, and I'll say yep. Come over to my layers, go ahead and create a new layer. I'll lock the layer containing this D, and then I'm going to leave it to you guys. I'll try my very best in the background to see if I can trace this out. So get that image and see how close you can come to make a path that correctly covers this letter D. Good luck. Okay, I've got mine traced out. It actually went a little better than I was expecting. Come over to my paths. I've got the work path selected. Now you'll notice I'm doing this in sort of 2 steps. So right now I've traced the outside of the letter D, and I'll go ahead and save this work path by dragging it down. onto the new layer section or new path section. And if I select my paint bucket here, and I've got the nice red color, and I come over and I choose this fill path, it's going to fill in that whole space, which is not really what I want, right? I can also choose the fill stroke, making sure, of course, that I've selected a brush, and it will fill the outer edges. So this is getting a little closer, but you'll note it's not going to be enough just to trace the outside of the letter. I'm also going to need to trace paths around these sections. So let's do that next. I'll hit pause, make sure that you're doing that as well in your tracing, and then we'll continue. Alright, I've gone ahead in my case and created a couple of additional paths for each of these areas inside the letter D. Now I'm going to use the stroke tool here, and instead of using the brush, I'll use a pencil to get a nice hard line. So I've selected the pencil tool, which I can get to by holding down the brush tool and then selecting it from the drop down menu. And I've set mine to be of size of 12. So I'll select path number 1, and that looks pretty good. Select path number 2, that looks pretty good. Path number 3, that looks pretty good. And then if I want to fill it, I can come back to my fill tool, and now it will nicely fill in that letter D. How did yours go? I hope it worked out for you. Again, it takes lots and lots of practice to get this looking really good, so you'll need to spend some time playing with it. So, you've had a chance to play around with the pen tool. Now we're going to get into creating the actual GUI texture that you're going to use for assignment number 6. And the objective is to understand and master concepts of using that pen and path tool, create a GUI texture for use in Unity, and then implement all of the code that we did in part 1 of this video in order to have a custom cursor that changes color when you roll over objects inside your scene. So let's do that next. We're getting close.